Yeah, so I'm a social work student at Western Sydney University. I'm doing 1,000 hours unpaid work placement just in this year. That means I can't earn much money from my job. I don't have a choice. And yeah, with the rising cost of living and skyrocketing rental prices, how can students afford to survive on under $50 a day? I know so many students that are going hungry and they're dropping out of essential degrees like nursing and teaching because they can't stay afloat on the current Austudy payment.
So what would you like to put to Andrew tonight about what you'd like to see in the budget?
Yeah, so my question to you, Andrew, is do you agree that a well-educated country is good for the economy? And if so, why won't the government increase the Austudy payment?
Eliza, yes, absolutely. Thank you for choosing social work. I'm sure you could have chosen an occupation that would have maximised your earning. What you're doing instead is picking an occupation that maximises the good you do to the world. And I'm very
Just to be able to finish a study yet, and that's going to be a struggle enough, isn't it?
Yeah, I certainly understand those pressures. The people around the cabinet table understand those pressures. And as we're putting together the cost of living package, we've got that very firmly in mind. We recognise the importance also of expanding spots to go to university. So, you can't fix in two budgets.
You're going to increase Austudy payment?
We can't fix in two budgets the problems that have emerged under 9 years of coalition misrule, but we're expanding places at university, tens of thousands of additional places targeted at first-in-family students, and looking at focusing that cost of living relief on making sure that people like you stay in university and go on to make a great impact on the world.
You mentioned before that we almost have full employment, and that's been a real windfall for the government, so much so that it's projected to bring down a budget in surplus. Why are you banking it and not spending that money that you've been able to get through higher tax take on people like Eliza?
We've got a substantial spending package, and we've also...
But you're also banking a lot of the windfall.
Well,
why are you spending that on people like Eliza who are struggling to get by?
We've got a range of things we're looking to do in the budget. Funding that aged care pay increase is important. Fixing up the National Disability Insurance Scheme is a huge priority for us. The impact investing focus, trying to turn around things like school attendance rates in Burnie, is a big priority for the government. And we're also making sure that the LNG projects pay some petroleum resource rent tax this decade rather than next, and tackling multinational tax dodging, working to put a 15% floor on the race to the bottom we've seen around the world on corporate taxes. We understand that if we get multinationals to pay their fair share, that opens the opportunity to do so much more to assist with cost of living relief.
I might go back to you, Irvine, just on reflecting on what you've heard here tonight, and many of the stories that you've heard out of the audience would resonate from what you see back in the UK, where people are deciding, do I eat or do I heat my home?
Yeah, I mean, I wish in some ways you're much more on top of it than we are. I think that Britain and America, unfortunately, really embraced the very worst aspects of neoliberalism and kind of got rid of the whole concept of a social democracy. So we really are suffering as a result of that. The social fabric's been ripped out of the country. And to an extent that it hasn't been in a lot of other countries, obviously like Australia, the fact that you're still having these conversations. If you look at what the Labour Party in Britain's proposing now, it's not kind of... It's not getting on top of anything like this, anything that's going to do good for working people. It's basically saying we'll be exactly like the Tory party, but slightly less corrupt. We won't kind of be spunking away all your tax money to our friends, So they probably will after a couple of terms, but because that's the way that politics is. I think the problem in Britain now, and it's great to see that it's not the same apparently in Australia, but in Britain and America, there's no confidence in politicians. We don't expect anything from them at all. We foolishly, in some ways, expect them to be entertainers, and that gave us Johnson and Trump and all the nonsense that went along with that. I think now we're kind of moving into a sort of a phase where we expect them to be competent and boring, basically, which is a massive improvement. But here you still expect them to do something, and that's good. They're your servants. It's like, don't ever lower your expectations of them, like we've been forced to do in the UK.
Good luck, Eliza, with your study and your work as well. Thank you for your question. I'll ask you a quick comment from Nova. Just listening to this too, Nova, I'm mindful, of course, that our people, First Nations people, are the most impoverished in Australia. What are our people looking for in the budget?
In 2023, I can say this, that in one community, I'll say the Tiwi Islands, the last census, 2021 census, you had about 1,100 Tiwi Islanders aged 17 to 45. So that's your working age. Out of that, you had 800 people on job seeker. That's 78% or thereabouts on the Tiwis. So we want our kids to go to school. Kids are going to school, but then there's no job. You know, there's no opportunity. So whilst, you know, and I've been there as a senator, and we have all these inquiries, and we go out to communities, and, you know, I spend a lot of time on the ground in remote communities, as you know, and you got people who are on the job seeker, $31 a day, and the same thing in these communities. It's like, do I put food on the table? Or you're watching the power, because you have to go and buy a power card in order for electricity. So you go buy it, then you come home, you click the button, and it tells you. And so all these people around 78% who don't have a job because there is no jobs. And so if we want to have this lucky country where people want to come here, you know, a lot of these Aboriginal people, they find it hard to be able to go into the big cities for opportunities. They want opportunities in their communities. You know, they want to be able to have, you know, all the things that our country towns have. And I think, you know, we saw that as a result of what's happening in Alice Springs, because communities are being left behind and they're treated as second-class, third-class, fourth-class citizens in this country. And so whilst, you know, you have a budget that says we're looking after the most impoverished, we'll start giving the people on the Tiwi Islands, all these people who are on job seeker, free power cards. So they don't have to choose, because once the fridge goes off, all the food that's in it, guess what happens to it? And then you get welfare coming around, oh, why aren't your kids eating? Oh, because we had to throw the food out. That went off because we don't have food in the fridge, because we couldn't afford the power. And it's just one big vicious cycle. People will never get out of poverty whilst this current situation happens in this lucky country of ours.